hell let this filth in here?
10 lawyers lined the table, pens ready. Across from them, CEO Eleanor Whitfield held a pen over the contract. A black cleaning woman in gray uniform walked straight to Eleanor and ripped the contract off the table.
They're lying!
Put that down, you disgusting... Drag this trash out! Go scrub a toilet. That's all your kind is good for.
Clara Brooks didn't flinch. She opened to page 89.
Hidden Shell Company, his name on it. This contract steals everything you built.
One by one, all 10 lawyers went pale. Drayton's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He recognized her. And what she revealed next didn't just end careers. It unraveled a secret so dangerous that no one in that room would ever be the same. 5 years before Clara Brooks ripped a contract out of Grant Drayton's hands, she was one of the most promising corporate attorneys in New York City. 28 years old, Columbia Law, top of her class. The only black woman on the litigation floor at Morrison & Hale, the kind of firm where partners drove cars worth more than most people's homes. Clara didn't come from money. She came from a 2-bedroom apartment in Flatbush, raised by a mother named Lorraine, who cleaned hotel rooms 6 days a week so her daughter could study 7. Lorraine Brooks never missed a tuition payment, not once. Even when her knees swelled so bad she could barely stand, she showed up, scrubbed, smiled, went home, did it again. The day Clara passed the bar exam, Lorraine handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a Mont Blanc pen, black and gold. "I've been saving for this since you were 12, Lorraine said, "for the day you'd need a pen worth signing something important." Clara carried that pen every single day. At Morrison & Hale, she worked harder than anyone. First one in, last one out. She reviewed contracts that senior associates passed over because the pages were too dense, the clauses too buried. She found things other lawyers missed. That was her gift. Patience. The willingness to sit with 200 pages of legalese until every comma made sense. That gift is what destroyed her. 8 months into a major merger review, Clara flagged a series of transactions routed through 3 shell companies in Delaware. The money trail led to one name: Grant Drayton, senior partner at Drayton Legal, one of Morrison & Hale's biggest clients. The man who brought in $40 million a year in billings, $12 million, siphoned from client trust accounts, hidden behind layers of corporate paperwork so thick that no one was supposed to look twice. Clara looked twice. She brought her findings to Richard Hale, the managing partner, printed every document, highlighted every discrepancy, laid it all on his desk. Hale listened, nodded, thanked her. 3 days later, Clara's office key card stopped working. The disciplinary complaint landed on the same day, filed by Drayton Legal. It alleged Clara had fabricated client documents, forged signatures, and misrepresented billing records. 3 witnesses, all from Drayton's firm, signed sworn statements confirming it. The evidence was airtight, because Grant Drayton had built it himself. Clara stood before the disciplinary board alone. No lawyer. She couldn't afford one. Morrison & Hale offered no support. Richard Hale wouldn't return her calls. "Miss Brooks, the evidence is overwhelming." "It's fabricated, all of it. If you check the metadata on those documents..." "We've reviewed everything we need to review." Her license was revoked on a Tuesday. By Thursday, every firm in the city had heard. The Whisper Network moved fast. She got caught forging documents. Always knew she was in over her head. Diversity hire gone wrong. Nobody checked the metadata. Nobody asked why a 28-year-old associate would risk her entire career forging billing records for a client she barely interacted with. Nobody asked because nobody wanted to. Grant Drayton was too powerful. The answer was too expensive. Clara lost her apartment in 6 weeks. Savings gone. No firm would touch her. She applied to retail jobs, office admin, anything. The background check killed every application. Disciplinary action. License revoked. Untrustworthy. Then Lorraine got sick. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came on a Monday. By Wednesday, Clara was sitting in a hospital hallway being told that the treatment her mother needed cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Lorraine spent her last 11 weeks in a public hospital ward. Shared room. Thin curtains. Machines beeping through the night. Clara sat beside her every evening after work. Whatever work she could find. Day labor, cleaning offices, cash jobs that didn't ask questions. "Baby, stop worrying about me. Mama, I'm going to fix this. You already fixed everything. You became everything I prayed for." Lorraine Brooks died on a Sunday morning. Clara was holding her hand. In her pocket was the Mont Blanc pen, the only thing she hadn't sold. After the funeral, Clara applied for a night cleaning position at Whitfield and Sterling. The building was 3 blocks from Morrison and Hale. She could see her old office window from the loading dock. She told herself she took the job because it paid $12 an hour and didn't require a background check. That was half true. The other half, the part she wouldn't admit to anyone, was that every night, after mopping the 40th floor boardroom, she sat in the empty conference room and read whatever documents the lawyers had left behind. Contracts, briefs, depositions, merger agreements. Not because she was planning anything, not because she had a scheme, because the law was the only thing that still made her feel like herself. The only place where the world followed rules, where truth was supposed to matter, where a comma in the wrong place could change everything. For 3 years, Clara Brooks cleaned floors and read contracts in the dark. Nobody noticed. Nobody looked at the cleaning woman long enough to notice anything. Then one Tuesday evening, the boardroom door opened, and 10 men in suits walked in. At the head of the table sat Grant Drayton, older, grayer, but wearing the same smile, the same confidence, the same certainty that no one in the room was smart enough to catch him. Clara was emptying the trash can by the window. Drayton glanced at her for half a second, looked right through her. The way you look at furniture. Clara didn't say a word that Tuesday evening. She finished emptying the trash, wiped down the side table, pushed her cart into the hallway, and stood there with her back against the wall, heart slamming against her ribs. Grant Drayton, in this building, with 10 lawyers. She knew what that meant. She'd seen it before. The formation, the suits, the confidence. A Drayton acquisition play. The same playbook he'd been running for a decade. Walk in with overwhelming legal firepower. Bury the real terms under 300 pages of jargon. Walk out with everything. That night, after the lawyers left, Clara went back into the boardroom. The draft contract was still on the table. 214 pages. Whitfield and Sterling merger agreement. Prepared by Drayton Legal LLP. Clara sat down in Eleanor Whitfield's chair. She pulled the document toward her, and she started reading. Page by page, clause by clause. The way she used to, with her finger tracing every line, her lips moving silently over each word. The first 40 pages were clean, standard merger language, representations and warranties, boilerplate indemnification, nothing unusual. Page 41 is where it started. A subclause buried inside a definition section. Proprietary intellectual assets. Defined so broadly that it included not just patents and trademarks, but every internal process, every algorithm, every piece of institutional knowledge Whitfield and Sterling had developed in 40 years. Clara's fingers stopped moving. She'd seen this language before. Not similar language. The exact same language. Word for word. The same construction Drayton had used in the trust account scheme. The one she'd flagged at Morrison and Hale. The one that got her disbarred. Her hands were shaking. She kept reading. Page 89. Transfer clause. All proprietary intellectual assets would be transferred to a holding entity called Pinnacle Ventures LLC upon completion of the merger. Clara pulled out her phone and searched the Delaware Corporate Registry. Pinnacle Ventures LLC. Registered 18 months ago. Registered agent. A law firm in Wilmington that Drayton had used on 3 previous deals. Beneficial owner. Unlisted. But Clara didn't need a name. She knew the architecture. She'd mapped it once before, and it had cost her everything. Page 122. Irrevocable waiver of founders' veto rights. Buried inside a section about post-merger governance transitions, if Eleanor signed this, she'd lose the one power that protected her. The ability to block any board decision that threatened the company's founding mission. Once that veto was gone, Drayton's people could strip the company for parts within 6 months. Clara sat in that empty boardroom until 4 in the morning. She read the entire contract twice. She photographed every critical page with her phone. She cross-referenced clause structures against what she remembered from the Morrison and Hale files, the files that had been used to destroy her. It was the same hand, the same mind, the same trick dressed in different clothes. By the time the sun came up, Clara had 47 photographs and 12 pages of handwritten notes on the back of cleaning supply order forms. Her hand ached. Her eyes burned. She stood up, looked at the contract one last time, and put it back exactly where she'd found it. Then she went to the supply closet, sat on an overturned bucket, and cried. Not because she was sad, because she was terrified. The last time she'd tried to expose Grant Drayton, he had taken everything from her. Her career, her reputation, her mother. And now she was sitting in a closet, holding a mop, thinking about doing it again. Clara didn't sleep that day. She sat in her apartment, staring at the photographs on her phone, flipping through the notes, running the numbers in her head. She thought about Lorraine, about the Mont Blanc pen in her coat pocket, about the last thing her mother ever said to her. "You became everything I prayed for." The signing meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning. Clara arrived at 7. She mopped the hallway outside the boardroom. She cleaned the glass on the conference room doors. She emptied every trash can on the floor. And she waited. At 9:45, the lawyers started arriving, one by one. Dark suits, leather briefcases. They walked past Clara without seeing her. One of them kicked her mop bucket and didn't look back. At 9:55, Eleanor Whitfield walked in. 72 years old, silver hair. A woman who had built a company from a 3-person office into a billion-dollar firm. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had been told by every advisor in the room that signing was the smart move. At 10 o'clock, Grant Drayton took his seat at the head of the table. The contract was placed in front of Eleanor. A pen was offered. "Shall we begin?" Clara stood outside the glass doors, mop in hand, heart in her throat. The Mont Blanc pen pressed against her chest through the fabric of her uniform. She watched Eleanor reach for the pen, and something in Clara Brooks broke open. Not broke down, broke open. She pushed through the doors. Every head turned. Drayton's face twisted in disgust. "Who the hell let this filth in here?" Clara walked past all 10 lawyers. She didn't run. She didn't hesitate. She reached across the table, took the contract out from under Eleanor's hand, and held it against her chest. "They're lying. Every single one of them." The room erupted. Insults flew. "Drag this trash out. Go scrub a toilet. That's all your kind is good for." Clara opened to page 89. She read the transfer clause out loud, not in legal jargon, but in plain English. She translated 200 pages of deception into 3 sentences a grandmother could understand. "This contract transfers every patent, every process, every idea your company has ever created to a shell company controlled by this man." She pointed at Drayton. "He doesn't want to merge with your company, Ms. Whitfield. He wants to hollow it out and sell the pieces." Silence. One lawyer closed his briefcase. Then another. Grant Drayton stared at Clara, and for the first time in 5 years, someone looked at her. Really looked at her. His face went white. "You," he whispered. Clara didn't blink. "Me." The boardroom cleared in under 3 minutes. 10 lawyers packed their briefcases and filed out without a word. Grant Drayton was the last to leave. He stopped at the door, turned, and looked at Clara the way a man looks at a locked safe he thought he'd already cracked. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The look said everything. This isn't over. The door clicked shut. Clara stood alone in the boardroom, holding 200 pages against her chest. Her hands were trembling. Her breath was shallow. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last 4 minutes was draining out of her legs, and she had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. Eleanor Whitfield hadn't moved. The 72-year-old CEO sat in her chair, pen still in her hand, staring at Clara with an expression that was impossible to read. Not anger, not gratitude. Something deeper, something older. "Sit down," Eleanor said. Clara didn't move. "Please, sit down." Clara pulled out a chair and sat. The contract was still pressed against her chest. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder, thick, worn at the edges, flagged with colored tabs. She placed it on the table between them. "I know who you are, Clara." The words landed like a slap. "I've known for 2 years." Clara's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of Clara's law school transcripts, her bar admission certificate, the disciplinary complaint, news clippings from the Morrison and Hale scandal, a photograph of Clara accepting a pro bono award 3 months before her disbarment. "When my HR department sent me your cleaning application, your name flagged in a background check. Most companies would have thrown it out. I pulled your file instead." Clara stared at the folder, at the life she'd lost, laid out in paper and ink on a mahogany table. "Why?" she whispered. Eleanor leaned back. "Because I've been watching Grant Drayton circle my company for 4 years. And I've been watching every lawyer I hire tell me his deals are clean. I needed someone who already knew he was dirty. You used me. I waited for you. That's the same thing.
No, it isn't. Eleanor folded her hands. Using you would have meant telling you what to look for, directing you, controlling the outcome. I didn't do any of that. I gave you a cleaning job and access to a building. What you did with it, the reading, the studying, the 3 years of sitting in this boardroom at 2 a.m, teaching yourself corporate law all over again, that was you. Every night, every page. That was all you. Clara's jaw tightened. The anger was still there, hot and sharp. 2 years. Eleanor had known for 2 years and said nothing. Watched her mop floors, watched her empty trash cans, watched her scrub toilets 12 feet from a boardroom where she should have been sitting at the table. You could have told me, and you would have run. Eleanor's voice was quiet. You were terrified, Clara. I could see it. Every time a lawyer walked past you in the hallway, you flinched. Every time someone raised their voice on a phone call, you looked at the floor. You weren't ready. And if I'd told you what I suspected about Drayton, you would have panicked. You would have disappeared. And he would have won. Clara wanted to argue. She couldn't, because Eleanor was right. The room was quiet for a long time. My husband built this company from a garage in Queens, Eleanor said. She wasn't looking at Clara anymore. She was looking at the window. Arthur Whitfield. No degree, no connections. He sold electrical components out of the back of a station wagon. Every banker in the city laughed at him. Every supplier made him pay cash up front because they didn't trust a man with grease under his fingernails. She paused. He never forgot what it felt like to be dismissed, to walk into a room and have people look right through you. He built this company on one rule: never become the person who made you feel small. Clara's hand moved to her pocket. The Mont Blanc pen was there. She wrapped her fingers around it. Your mother was a hotel cleaner, Eleanor said softly. Arthur's mother cleaned office buildings. I don't think that's a coincidence. Something cracked inside Clara's chest. Not the anger. Something behind it. Something she'd been holding in place for 5 years with silence and discipline and the stubborn refusal to feel anything at all. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her grip on the pen tightened until her knuckles ached. Eleanor opened a second drawer. Inside was a stack of files, thicker than the first. Transaction records, internal memos from Drayton Legal, banking statements, shell company registrations. 4 years of evidence, carefully organized, methodically collected. I've been building this for a long time, Eleanor said. But I'm not a lawyer. I can collect paper. I can't read it the way you read it. I can't see the architecture the way you see it. She pushed the stack across the table. I'm not asking you to be my employee, Clara. I'm asking you to be my partner in this. Help me take him down. Not for me. For every person he's buried to get where he is. Clara looked at the files. At Eleanor. At the contract still in her hands. He'll come after us, Clara said. He'll come after both of us. I know. He has the money, the connections, the press. He will try to destroy everything. I know that too. And you still want to fight him? Eleanor smiled for the first time. It was a tired smile. The smile of a woman who had been fighting alone for 4 years and was exhausted. My dear, I've been fighting him since before you walked through that door with a mop. The only difference now is that I'm not fighting alone.
Clara set the contract down on the table. She pulled the Mont Blanc pen from her pocket and placed it beside the files. My mother gave me this pen the day I passed the bar. She said it was for signing something important. She looked at Eleanor. I think this is what she meant. That night, Clara didn't go home. She sat in Eleanor's private office, a room she'd cleaned 100 times but never sat in, and began reading. Eleanor brought coffee at 11, sandwiches at midnight, a blanket at 2 in the morning when Clara's eyes were red and her notes covered every surface. At 3 a.m., Eleanor paused at the door.
Clara? Thank you for walking into that boardroom today.
Clara looked up from a stack of banking records.
Thank you for not throwing me out.
Eleanor smiled.
Good night, Clara. Good night, Miss Whitfield. Eleanor. Call me Eleanor.
The door closed softly. Clara sat alone in the warm light of the office, surrounded by paper, holding her mother's pen. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel invisible. The next morning, Clara called Theo Williams, a young civil rights attorney who had been tracking Drayton Legal's pattern of targeting minority professionals for years. He had suspicions. He had theories. What he didn't have was proof. Clara had proof. Theo arrived at Whitfield and Sterling that afternoon. Clara laid out the contract analysis, the shell company architecture, the connection to her own disbarment. Theo sat in silence for 20 minutes, flipping through pages. This is it, he said quietly. This is the case I've been trying to build for 6 years. Then let's build it together. Grant Drayton did not wait. 48 hours after Clara Brooks humiliated him in that boardroom, the machine started moving. Phase 1 was the press. A story appeared in the New York Business Journal on Wednesday morning. The headline read, "Disbarred attorney infiltrates major corporation, manipulates elderly CEO." The source was anonymous. The details were surgical. Clara's full name, her disciplinary record, her current position as a cleaning woman at Whitfield and Sterling. The article painted a picture of a bitter, unstable woman who had conned her way into a vulnerable CEO's trust. By noon, 3 more outlets had picked it up. By evening, it was on cable news. A legal commentator on a primetime show called it one of the most brazen cases of corporate manipulation I've ever seen, and from a janitor, no less. The word janitor trended on social media for 6 hours. Clara's face was everywhere. Someone had found her old LinkedIn photo from Morrison and Hale, young, smiling, professional, and placed it side by side with a grainy security camera still of her in a cleaning uniform pushing a mop cart. The comparison went viral. The comments were savage. She got disbarred for a reason. This is what happens when you let people into places they don't belong. Cleaning lady thinks she's a lawyer. Classic. Hashtag fraud cleaner hit 200,000 posts in one day. People who had never met Clara Brooks debated her character on live television. Strangers posted her apartment building address in comment sections. A morning show host held up her disbarment record and laughed. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't make this up. Clara stopped checking her phone after the first 3 hours. It didn't matter. The damage was already spreading faster than she could process it. Her landlord called. Someone had contacted him, told him his tenant was a known con artist involved in active litigation. He wanted her out by the end of the month. That night, Clara came home to find the word liar spray-painted across her apartment door in red. The paint was still wet. It dripped down the wood like something bleeding. She stood in the hallway for a full minute, keys in hand, staring at the paint. Then she unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. She didn't call the police. She didn't take a photo. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and pressed her mother's pen against her chest. Phase 2 was the courtroom. Drayton Legal filed 3 lawsuits in 4 days. A defamation suit against Clara Brooks, seeking $50 million in damages. A breach of fiduciary duty claim against Eleanor Whitfield, alleging she had conspired with a known bad actor to sabotage a legitimate business transaction. And a restraining order against Theo Williams, claiming he had engaged in predatory litigation tactics by contacting former Drayton Legal employees. $50 million against a woman who made $12 an hour. The message was clear. This wasn't about winning in court. This was about drowning them in legal fees, burying them in paper, making the fight so expensive and so exhausting that they'd quit before a judge ever heard the truth. Drayton's team also sent cease and desist letters to every law firm Theo had contacted for support. 14 firms. 14 polite, professionally worded threats. Not one of them responded to Theo's follow-up calls. Theo Williams got the call on a Friday afternoon. His old firm, the one where he'd started his career, reached out through a mutual contact. The message was friendly, casual, the kind of friendly that carries a knife behind its back. Theo, we're hearing you've taken on a case against Drayton Legal. We just want you to know there are certain clients that make future partnerships very difficult. We'd hate to see a promising career get complicated over something like this. Theo hung up, sat in his office for 10 minutes, then called Clara. They're putting pressure on me. How bad? Bad enough that my old firm called to threaten me without using the word threaten. Silence on the line. You can walk away, Theo. I'll understand. I'm not walking away. I just need you to know what we're up against. Phase 3 was the boardroom. Again, Drayton didn't need to win in court. He needed to win inside Whitfield and Sterling. 3 of the 7 board members had received private calls from associates of Drayton Legal in the week following the incident. The calls were polite, professional. They raised concerns about Eleanor's judgment, about her age, about whether a woman in her 70s was still fit to lead a billion-dollar company, or whether she'd become an easy target for anyone with a sob story and a mop. By the following Tuesday, a motion was on the table, an emergency board vote to remove Eleanor Whitfield as CEO and authorize the merger. The vote happened behind closed doors. Clara wasn't allowed in the room. She sat outside in the hallway, the same hallway she used to mop, and listened to muffled voices through the wall. At one point, someone shouted, then silence. Then more voices, lower this time, careful and measured, the way people talk when they know someone's career is about to end. 3 votes for removal, 2 for Eleanor, 2 abstentions. Eleanor survived, barely. 1 abstention away from losing the company her husband had built from a garage in Queens. She walked out of the boardroom with her back straight and her face composed. She didn't speak until they were alone in her office. That was close. Too close, Clara said. They'll try again. Next quarter. They'll keep pushing until the numbers flip. Clara stared at the floor. The pattern was familiar. Painfully familiar. 5 years ago, Drayton had isolated her, cut off her allies, poisoned her reputation, made it so expensive to stand beside her that everyone walked away. He was doing it again. Not just to her this time, to Eleanor, to Theo, to anyone who got close. That night, Clara sat at Eleanor's desk and wrote a letter. 2 paragraphs. No emotion, no explanation, just the facts. A resignation letter. She left it on Eleanor's desk at midnight, tucked under the Mont Blanc pen. Eleanor found it at 6 the next morning. She read it once, read it again. Then she picked up the phone. "Come to my office." Clara arrived 20 minutes later. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Because she hadn't. "What is this?" Eleanor held up the letter. "It's the right thing to do. Everyone who stands next to me gets hurt. You almost lost your company yesterday because of me."
I almost lost my company because of Grant Drayton, not because of you.
It doesn't matter. The result is the same. He uses me to get to you. If I'm gone...
If you're gone, he wins. And he knows it. That's exactly why he's doing this. Eleanor set the letter down. Then she picked up the Mont Blanc pen and placed it on top. 5 years ago, they made you believe you were the problem, that everything that happened was your fault, that you deserved what they did to you. Eleanor's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet.
Are you going to let them do it again?
Clara looked at the pen, at the letter, at this 72-year-old woman who had more fight left in her than anyone Clara had ever met. Your mother gave you this pen because she believed you'd use it to fight, not to surrender. Clara picked up the resignation letter, held it in both hands, and tore it in half. "Good," Eleanor said, "because something arrived this morning that changes everything." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a flash drive. Theo got a call last night. A woman named Sandra Cole. She was a paralegal at Drayton Legal for 9 years. She left 18 months ago. She says she has internal emails, direct communications, proving that Grant Drayton personally ordered the fabrication of evidence in your disciplinary case 5 years ago. Clara's hand went to the edge of the desk.
She has the original emails?
With metadata, timestamps, server logs, everything the disciplinary board refused to look at 5 years ago. Clara sat down slowly.
Why now? Why is she coming forward now?
Because she saw the news. She saw what they're doing to you. And she said, her exact words, "He did it to her. He'll do it to anyone. And I can't watch it happen again." Clara closed her eyes. For 5 years, she had believed she was alone, that no one inside Drayton's machine had seen what happened, that no one had cared. Someone had seen. Someone had cared. Someone had kept the receipts. She opened her eyes. "When does she want to meet?" "Tomorrow." Clara picked up her mother's pen and slipped it back into her pocket. The courtroom was full by 8:30. Word had spread. The story of the cleaning woman versus the billion-dollar law firm had escaped the business pages and landed in the mainstream. Reporters lined the back row. Camera crews waited on the courthouse steps. Social media accounts that had mocked Clara Brooks 2 weeks ago were now posting countdowns to the hearing. Clara arrived at 8:15. Gray blazer, white blouse. No jewelry except the Mont Blanc pen clipped to her breast pocket. Theo Williams walked beside her, carrying 2 boxes of documents. Grant Drayton arrived at 8:45. He came with 8 lawyers, 2 fewer than the boardroom. 2 of his original 10 had quietly withdrawn from the case in the days leading up to the trial. No public statement, no explanation, just empty chairs. Drayton didn't look at Clara. He sat at the defense table, adjusted his cufflinks, and opened his briefcase as though this were just another Tuesday. The judge entered. The Honorable Catherine Pierce, 30 years on the bench. She looked at both tables over the rim of her glasses and said nothing for a long moment. Let's begin. Drayton's lead counsel opened first. The argument was polished, rehearsed, delivered with the kind of confidence that comes from decades of winning. Clara Brooks was a disgraced attorney with a vendetta. She had manipulated an elderly woman. She had fabricated claims about a legitimate merger. Her disbarment 5 years ago was proof of a pattern. A woman who lied, who forged documents, who couldn't accept the consequences of her own misconduct. Ms. Brooks is not a whistleblower, Your Honor. She is a convicted fraud who found a new victim. Theo let them finish. He didn't interrupt. He didn't object. He sat with his hands folded and waited. Then he stood up. Your Honor, the defense has described my client as a fraud. They've pointed to a disciplinary ruling from 5 years ago as evidence of her character. We'd like to show the court exactly how that ruling was manufactured. He called Sandra Cole to the stand. Sandra walked to the witness box like a woman walking into a fire she'd been circling for years. Her hands were clasped in front of her. Her voice shook on the first sentence. By the second, it was steady. I was a paralegal at Drayton Legal for 9 years. I reported directly to Grant Drayton's office. Ms. Cole, can you describe what happened in October, 5 years ago, when Clara Brooks filed an internal report at Morrison & Hale? Sandra took a breath. Mr. Drayton called an emergency meeting with 3 senior staff. He told us a junior associate at Morrison & Hale had discovered the trust account transfers. He said, his exact words, "Make the Brooks problem disappear." The courtroom shifted. Reporters leaned forward. What happened next? We were instructed to create a counter-narrative, modified billing records, backdated correspondence, 3 sworn affidavits from people who were told what to write and where to sign. I personally formatted 2 of those documents on Mr. Drayton's direct instruction. Drayton's lead counsel shot to his feet. Objection! This testimony is uncorroborated and— It's corroborated. Theo held up a flash drive. These are internal emails from Drayton Legal's own servers, recovered by Ms. Cole before her departure. Metadata intact. Timestamps verified by an independent forensic analyst. Every instruction, every edit, every revision, all traceable to Mr. Drayton's account. The judge examined the flash drive documentation for 4 minutes. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of pages turning. I'll allow it. Drayton's face didn't change, but his right hand, the one resting on the table, closed into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. Theo pressed forward. He projected a side-by-side comparison on the courtroom screen. On the left, the clause structures from the Whitfield and Sterling merger contract. On the right, identical clause structures from 4 other Drayton Legal mergers over the past decade. Same shell company architecture, same hidden transfer mechanisms, same linguistic patterns buried in the same subsections. This is not one bad deal, Your Honor. This is a system. A pattern of fraud spanning 10 years and at least 5 major corporate acquisitions. The same playbook, used again and again, hidden behind the same legal language. One of Drayton's remaining lawyers leaned over and whispered something to the lawyer beside him. Then he closed his briefcase, quietly, without looking at Drayton. Then another one did the same. Theo turned to the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to call one more witness, Clara Brooks. Clara stood, walked to the witness box, placed her hands flat on the wood. She didn't bring notes. She didn't need them. Ms. Brooks, Theo said, in your own words. Clara looked at the courtroom, at the reporters, at the cameras, at Grant Drayton, who was staring at the table in front of him. 5 years ago, I found $12 million hidden in shell companies controlled by that man. She didn't point. She didn't need to. Everyone knew who she meant. I reported it. I followed every rule, every procedure. I did what any ethical attorney is supposed to do. In return, he fabricated evidence. He destroyed my license. He made sure no firm in this city would return my calls. And when I couldn't work, when I couldn't pay for my mother's cancer treatment, he didn't lose a single night of sleep. Her voice didn't waver, not once. My mother died in a public hospital ward because I couldn't afford to move her to a facility that could treat her. She cleaned hotel rooms for 30 years so I could become a lawyer. She gave me a pen the day I passed the bar and told me to use it to sign something important. Clara paused. The courtroom was absolutely still. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because silence is how men like Grant Drayton win. They count on people like me staying quiet, staying invisible, mopping floors and keeping our heads down. For 5 years I was silent. I watched my mother die. I scrubbed conference rooms where people made deals I could have negotiated in my sleep. And I said nothing, because they told me I was nothing. She looked directly at the judge. But the law doesn't care what uniform you wear. The truth is the truth, whether it comes from a corner office or a cleaning cart. She turned to Drayton. He still wouldn't look at her. You buried me once. You won't bury her. The courtroom was silent for 11 seconds, the kind of silence that has weight. A lawyer on Drayton's side put down his pen, pushed his chair back from the table, stood up, and walked to the gallery. He didn't say a word. He just left. Then another. Then a third. Grant Drayton sat at the defense table with 5 empty chairs beside him. Judge Pierce removed her glasses. She spoke slowly. The court finds sufficient evidence to refer this matter for criminal investigation into Grant Drayton and Drayton Legal LLP. All assets of Drayton Legal are frozen pending investigation. The Whitfield and Sterling merger agreement is voided in its entirety, and I am ordering an immediate reopening of the disciplinary proceedings against Clara Brooks, with full review of the evidence presented today. She looked at Drayton. Mr. Drayton, I strongly suggest you retain personal counsel. You're going to need it. Grant Drayton sat alone at a table built for 10. His briefcase was still open. His cufflinks still gleamed. But the empire he'd built, the one constructed on silence, on fear, on the certainty that no one would ever fight back, was collapsing around him in real time. And the woman who started it all was walking out of the courtroom with a Mont Blanc pen in her pocket and her head held high. 6 months later, Clara Brooks stood in front of a mahogany podium at the New York State Bar Association, the same building where her license had been revoked, the same hallway, the same fluorescent lights humming overhead. But this time, the room was full of people clapping. The disciplinary board had reviewed the evidence, Sandra Cole's emails, the forensic metadata analysis, the pattern of fabrication across 5 Drayton legal cases. The reversal was unanimous. Every member. No abstentions, no dissent. Clara Brooks was reinstated as a licensed attorney in the state of New York. She signed the reinstatement papers with her mother's Mont Blanc pen. Her hand shook. She let it shake. She didn't try to hide it. Theo Williams was in the 3rd row. He clapped longer than anyone. Eleanor Whitfield was in the front row. She didn't clap. She just smiled. The quiet, knowing smile of a woman who had waited 4 years for this exact moment. The weeks that followed moved fast. Grant Drayton was indicted on 14 counts: wire fraud, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. His bail was set at $12 million, the same number he'd stolen from those trust accounts a decade ago. The judge didn't mention the coincidence. She didn't need to. Drayton Legal was dissolved. The firm that had terrorized corporate New York for 20 years closed its doors on a Wednesday afternoon. 6 of the 10 lawyers who had sat in Eleanor's boardroom cooperated with federal investigators in exchange for reduced charges. 4 were indicted alongside Drayton. The offices were empty by Friday. Someone left a briefcase in the lobby. Nobody came back for it. Sandra Cole received whistleblower protection and a settlement from the Drayton Legal Dissolution Fund. Clara hired her the following month, first member of the new legal team at Whitfield and Sterling. Sandra cried when she got the offer letter. Clara pretended not to notice, but she slid a box of tissues across the desk without saying a word. Theo Williams opened his own practice, a small office in Brooklyn, civil rights and corporate accountability. Clara sent him his first 3 referrals in the first week. He called to thank her. "You don't have to keep sending me clients, Clara." "I'm not sending you clients. I'm sending you fights worth having." Eleanor Whitfield appointed Clara as general counsel of Whitfield and Sterling on a Monday morning. The announcement went out company-wide at 9 a.m. By 9:15, Clara was sitting in her new office, corner unit, 40th floor, 12 steps from the boardroom where she used to empty trash cans at 2 in the morning. She kept her desk simple: a laptop, a legal pad, a framed photograph of Lorraine Brooks, taken on the day Clara graduated from Columbia Law. Lorraine was wearing her hotel uniform. She'd come straight from a shift. She was smiling so wide her eyes were almost closed. Next to the photograph, the Mont Blanc pen. 3 weeks later, Eleanor hosted a private ceremony in the Whitfield and Sterling lobby. 50 guests. Board members, employees, a handful of journalists. A brass plaque was unveiled on the south wall. The Lorraine Brooks Foundation, for students who were told they couldn't and proved they could. A full-ride scholarship fund for Black law students from working-class families. Tuition, books, bar prep, mentorship. Every year, indefinitely. Funded by Whitfield and Sterling and administered by Clara Brooks personally. Clara stood at the podium. She had prepared a speech. 3 pages, double-spaced, professional. She folded it and put it in her pocket.
"My mother cleaned hotel rooms for 30 years, she said. She never missed a shift. She never complained. And she never once believed that cleaning was all she was worth. She believed it was what she did so that someone she loved could become something more." She paused. "This foundation isn't about me. It's about every kid sitting in a library right now, studying with borrowed books, wondering if anyone's ever going to give them a chance. I'm here to tell them, someone is." She stepped down from the podium. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Neither of them said a word. Neither of them needed to. That night, long after the guests had left, Clara sat alone in her office. The building was quiet. The city hummed 40 floors below. A knock at the open door. Clara looked up. A young woman in a gray cleaning uniform stood in the hallway, holding a trash bag. "Sorry, I didn't know anyone was still here. I can come back." "No, come in." Clara stood. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated. Nobody on this floor had ever asked her name before. "Denise." "I'm Clara." She extended her hand. "If you ever need anything, Anything at all, my door is open." Denise shook her hand slowly, confused, grateful, not sure what to make of a general counsel who shook hands with the cleaning staff. Clara watched her go. Then she sat back down, picked up her mother's pen, and placed it next to Lorraine's photograph. The city lights reflected off the glass. Somewhere 40 floors below, the loading dock where Clara used to start her shift was dark and quiet. She didn't look down. Some people build legacies from corner offices. Clara Brooks built hers from a cleaning cart. One truth at a time. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment. What would you have done in Clara's shoes? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because stories like this one deserve to be told.
Bruh, truth doesn't care about your title or your uniform. They can take your position, your name, even your reputation, but they can never erase what you know. Silence protects lies. Speaking up, that's real power.